Parshas Noach, it says, after HaKadosh Baruch Hu is matir basar to b'nei Noach, it says, ach basar b'nafsho idamo elo yiseichelu. And Rashi says that it's referring to Ever Min HaChai. Before we go into Ben Noach, I want to just, maybe as an introduction, just push it. Let's talk simply by a yid. There's really two isurim. There's Ever Min HaChai and there's Basar Min HaChai. What's the difference? If a person takes from a live animal, I want to be a little bit specific over here just to get the point. If a person takes a limb of a live animal, cuts it off, and eats it, so that's Ever Min HaChai. What does it mean, Ever Min HaChai? It has to have basar, atzamais, gidin. It has to have bones, flesh, and tendons, and veins, whatever a limb has. And basar is simply if a person goes over to a live animal, cuts off a piece of meat, and eats it. So by Yid, what's the nafkamina? Why is there two isurim? Every time you're going to eat Ever Min HaChai, you have basar, right? Because every Ever has basar. So by Yid, there's two simple answers. One is could be lav or lav b'shnei lavim. So we find many times in the Torah there's more than one lav for something. So if you eat a Ever Min HaChai, you'll be Ever plus basar. If you eat just basar, so you'll just be Ever basar. That's one simple answer. Second simple answer is that if you have an Ever that's less than a kazayis, we know that whenever there's an Isra Achila in the Torah, there's at least a kazayis. Most Isurim are kazayis. Whenever the Torah says Achila, it's referring to kazayis. So if you have an Ever that's less than a kazayis, the Torah says the Ever is Asr, so you'll be Ever, or it's Ever Min HaChai, but you won't be Ever Basar Min HaChai. And Basar Min HaChai, you'll only be Ever if it has a kazayis. So that's the second simple nafkamina. But all that's good by Yid. But by a guy, the Rambam says, Rashi we said only mentions Ever Min HaChai, but the Rambam mentions both. In Perek Tes, Melchas Melachim, Malacha Yud, that's where the Rambam speaks about all the halachas of Ben Noach. He says that a Ben Noach has both Isurim, has Ever Min HaChai and Basar Min HaChai. So, and the Rambam says Bechol Shul. Why Bechol Shul? Because we know that all shiurim that we said before, you have to eat a kazayis. All shiurim are Alach Moshe Sinai. Alach Moshe Sinai. Rambam says is no gizogavorim for a yid. It wasn't said for a guy. All the shiurim are only neged to a yid. So the first, so that I don't remember if it was the first or second, whatever. The answer we gave that if you eat an Ever that has less than a kazayis, it's not neged for a guy, because as soon as he takes a bite of the Ever, Rambam says it's bekoshu, because there's no shiurim for a guy. For a guy, bekoshu, right away he's chayev. So we don't have that nafkamina. We also don't have the nafkamina of lav ala b'shnei lavim. Why? Because the Rambam paskins, and it's brought in the Gemara, by the guy azar asan zu misasan. There's no such thing. There's no malchus. There's no two lavim. Right away, gleich azar asan zu misasan. So this question, from Nassan Adler, the Rebbe of the Chasam Sofer was talking and learning with the Shagasarya, and the Shagasarya asked him this question. According to the Rambam, why does he say that there's two isurim for a guy? What's in negeh? It's never negeh, because as soon as the guy eats a little piece of the Ever Min HaChai, right away it's Basar Min HaChai also, and you can't tell me it's lav or al b'shnei lavin, because azarasan zuyim misasan. So Rabbi Kiva Eger, it's over here, and I don't know if the Kela has the sefer. Rabbi Kiva Eger Torah. So he brings this down in the Shagasari also, and he says that you could say the nafkamina is that we know the halacha is that whenever the Torah asks achila, it's only if you eat it kederech achilase. What happens if I take a piece of the veila and I put all sorts of reish velana on it, I put all sorts of bitter things on it, the halacha is I'm not chayev. He says, Dr. Bikiveger, but by Ever Min HaChai, we said it includes atzamis, it includes bones. Bones, memela, is not something that you eat. And if it's memela, it's something that you eat. So the Torah is telling you beferish that even if it's shaloike derech achila, so you're still chayav. So says Rabbi Akiva Eiger, that will be the nafkamina. If a guy takes every minachai and puts all sorts of bitter things in it, so he won't be over otz basar minachai, but it'll only be over otz ever minachai, because that the Torah says even if it's not edible, because the tzamas are not edible, so he'll be chayav for that, and basar will only be chayav if he eats it the regular way. So he won't be chayav otz basar minachai in that case. He'll only be chayav otz ever minachai. That's Rabbi Akiva Eiger's answer. The Maise, the Pri Megadim over there, the Pri Megadim is not talking about a guy, he's talking about a yid, the guy by this halacha of ever minachai, and he says v'da'oid, the Pri Megadim says v'da'oid the chol yisum shebater and loikelayim el derech achila, like we said before. All these serum you could only be over if you eat it the regular way. V'hu adin ever minachai. V'loi teima, and don't tell me, given the gidim ve'atzamais mitztarfim v'les bu tam, since gidim and atzamais are mitztarfim and they don't have a taste, harei chiva Torah. He doesn't bring down Rabbi Akiva Eiger, but that sounds exactly like Rabbi Akiva's answer. He says, don't give me that answer. Don't tell me that since there's gidim ve'atzamais and they're not edible anyway, so if you would eat it shalok derech achila, then you'll be chayev. Halesa. Why? Because he says av gidanashe, we find the same thing. Gidanashe has no tam; it's a gid, right? It's a vein or a tendon, and it has no taste. The embotam, and the halacha is that you're only loike if you ate it. Kederech of the achila. The afuke if you put the ear of lana v'reish oyach l'chai. So he brings a raya from gidanashe that even though it's not edible, still the Torah only is mechayiv you if you ate it the normal way. But if you put all sorts of bitter things in it, then you won't be chayiv. So he says the same thing over here. You won't be chayiv. The same thing over here. You won't be chayiv, even though it's given out samis, but it's only if you ate it the regular way, but not if you put all sorts of things that make it very bitter. So. So that's that Rabbi Sher and Rabbi Akiva Eiger. Rabbi Sher and Rabbi Akiva Eiger. Thank you. Rabbi Sher and Rabbi Akiva Eiger that lecher from the Pri Megadim has a very good raya from Gidan Nashe. From Gidan Nashe the it's not edible and still you only chay if you did it kederech hanase. It's interesting that could be. I mean. The Rabbi Akiva Eiger's raya is only from atzamis. If you medayik in the lashon, he says only atzamis. So it could be in Gidanashe's maskim. I mean, I guess it's a little bit softer. Maybe it is a little bit more edible than bones. I know there are people who like to suck the bones, but you can't really eat. You don't really bite through the bones and eat the whole bones. So that's really something that's maybe that's the only thing I could think of that maybe it's different than Gidanashe. But in any case, let's go on back to the kasha. So they bring down over here from some of the Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva Eiger. They give another answer over here. So again, the question is that every time a guy eats Ever Minachai right away from the mashra that he's eating basar right away, he's chayav alts basar. So what's the nafkamina that there's another issur of Ever Minachai? So they bring down another answer over here that we know the halacha is that if somebody needs to eat something asur, the halacha is machili noisa kal tchila. That if you need to eat something asur and there's a choice, the doctor says you have to eat this, and there's a choice. It's either one isur or two lavin. So you go ahead and you eat the one that has the one lav. If that's going to heal you, so that's what you have to do. You have to take the more lenient avera. So he says they say over here that the same thing will be by ben noyach. If a ben noyach has a choice of Ever Minachai that was a limb that was taken off an animal that was alive, or a piece of meat that was taken from an animal that was alive, and he has the choice. He's about to die, and he has the choice to eat one of the two. So he says if he would go ahead and take the Ever Minachai, he's going to have two Isurim, and he'll be Chayev. He'll be Chayev Misa for doing that. He would have to choose the Basa Minachai, which only has one Isur. So we asked before what's in Nagea to that there's two Isurim by Goy. So this is one Nafkamina. There'll be Nagea for in this case Machin Yosef Kal Kal Tchila. So in this, there's a lot of ink was spilled over this. The Rikiveg himself says over here that Mechatesi, that by a Goy, by a Yid, we know that there's a mitzvah of a Chai B'hem, right? So you don't have that mitzvah by it's a Shaila if you have that mitzvah by a Goy, but Rikiveg himself says that it doesn't apply by a Goy. Because the Chai B'hem was only said by Yisrael. And then that's where there's a din. But by a Goy, mechatesi, I could give him bichlal any iser. If he's very sick. The Chasam Sofer says this answer, and he holds that it's interesting. The Chasam Sofer was talking about. The Chasam Sofer is talking about the Goy himself doing it. Rabbi Kiva Eger over here is talking about machili noisa, right? If a yid wants to feed him, and the Chasam Sofer doesn't say that. He just says for the Goy himself. The Goy himself has two choices, even though both of these halachas are learned for Machai B'hem, but could be it's a little bit different. Why am I saying that? Because I don't want to make the Shver argue with the. I never argue with Meshver. So could be it's different, even though it's both learned for B'chai B'hem, but over here it's B'chai B'hem plus. It's B'chai B'hem, and then also that I should go and give it to him. The Chasam Sofer is talking about just a Goy. He says the nafkamina will be if a Goy is sick and he has a choice, he has two things in front of him, which one he should take. So he should take the one that's more kal. He should take only the basar, not the Ever Minachai. So the guy by this, if there's B'chai B'hem by a Goy, there's a lot of people spilled over this. There's the Chaim Al Rambam in Sefer. He says that it was only said by Yisrael. There's also Marsha in the Darim. Marsha in the Darim says that he brings down from somebody asks over there that Moshe Rabbeinu when he went out and he wasn't mal his son, so there was a taina on him. But what was Moshe Rabbeinu's taina? That it's a sakana, right? It's a sakana. So how could I go out and not do a milah? So they ask over there, what do you mean? It was before the Torah was given. There was no v'chai b'hem, right? And you still had the mitzvah of milah. So you don't have the mitzvah of v'chai b'hem. So what's your taina b'chlal? That there's a sakana. So there's a big nidun about that if there is v'chai b'hem by a Goy or not. The Binyan Tzion, that's the Aruch LaNer, the same Zel B'Yin, he brings down another answer. We know the halacha is that there's also lifnei iver lisita michshol by a Goy also. The Gemara says you shouldn't hand over a Goy every minachai because it's lifnei iver lisita michshol. The Gemara says that that's only if he can't get it himself. The trever the nara, right? If he can't get it himself and I go give it to him, so then I'm chayav for lifnei iver. So what happens, says the Binyan Tzion, what happens if he has basar minachai, right? He's the trever the nara. He has basar minachai, but he doesn't have a minachai, and he asks me to give him the minachai, and I give it to him. So the nafkamina would be that. So we asked, what's the nafkamina? That there's another issur. That would be the nafkamina. If it would be just basar minachai, so then he has it anyway. So it's not called the trever the nara. But since I'm giving him a minachai, and there will be that other issue on it, so then it'll be usher to give it to him. 5 minutes left. Okay. Shkoyach for listening.
I still have it.